Alright, welcome to the Strange North channel. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the Old Hag of Newfoundland. So a couple months ago, I posted a video where I talked about some of the notable dream experiences that I've had in my life. And in that video, I mentioned one time where I experienced partial sleep paralysis. And essentially, sleep paralysis is when someone wakes up, but they're unable to move their body. They're fully conscious, but their body is completely frozen. Sometimes when people are in this state, they can move a little bit, they can move their eyes around, or they can sort of turn their head, but essentially their body is frozen while they're fully conscious. And interestingly, when people are in this state, they quite often report the presence of something malevolent or scary in the room with them. And honestly, the stories are really creepy. People report seeing all sorts of things, everything from scary ghosts to shadow figures with tall hats. And like I said, I haven't experienced full sleep paralysis myself, but this topic has always fascinated me. And numbers widely vary, but they estimate that between 8 and 50% of the population has experienced sleep paralysis at some point in their life. And so Newfoundland specifically has their own legend around sleep paralysis, and they call it the Old Hag, or it's sometimes called the Old Hag syndrome. And this is where people talk about experiencing sleep paralysis with the addition of this malevolent woman. People talk about being in this state of sleep paralysis and then seeing this old woman in the room. And people report that when they're in this state of paralysis, this woman will then sit on their chest and impede their ability to breathe. And often she even whispers threats and curses into people's ears while this is happening. And like I mentioned, they estimate that between 8 and 50% of the population in general experiences sleep paralysis at some point in their life. But in the province of Newfoundland, that number is higher, and they estimate that about 60% of people in the province have experienced the Old Hag. And the Old Hag legend really has its roots in the United Kingdom, where many of Newfoundland's inhabitants came from. In fact, until the early 20th century, hag riding and hagging were common explanations for sleep paralysis in parts of western and southern England. In fact, there were assault cases in Somerset and Dorset brought before the courts against suspected witches who were thought to be the cause of these attacks. And so this was a very strong legend in the United Kingdom, and many people moved from that area of the world to Canada and brought these legends with them. And there are manuscripts from as early as 1896 in Newfoundland where people discuss this phenomenon and talk about ways to ward off the Old Hag. In fact, I read an old folktale from Newfoundland where someone was talking about how to ward off the Old Hag. And they said that you were supposed to drive nails through a shingle and then tie that shingle to your chest. And this was supposed to protect against attacks from the Old Hag. Other folk remedies to protect against this entity included hanging a red ribbon above the bed and also placing a pair of scissors under your pillow. And in old Newfoundland folklore, apparently the Old Hag can be summoned to attack somebody like a curse. There's a well-known psychiatric professor named Dr. David Hufford, and he wrote a book in 1982 called The Terror That Comes in the Night, where he studied the phenomenon of sleep paralysis. And according to old Newfoundland folklore, apparently the Old Hag can be summoned by reciting the Lord's Prayer backwards. And this phenomenon has also been studied extensively by others. I found a 1978 academic study that looked at people who experienced sleep paralysis, and it compared two groups: people who believed they had been visited by the Old Hag specifically, and people who believed that they had experienced regular sleep paralysis. And the study found that there were no psychological differences between these two groups. People that experienced the Old Hag were no crazier than your average person, and normal everyday people were having this Old Hag experience. And to this day, this remains a very strong legend within Newfoundland. Many people in Newfoundland who have absolutely no belief in ghosts or anything like that do believe in the Old Hag. And it's a very persistent legend in that province, and more people in Newfoundland experience this phenomenon than in other areas of the country, and I find that fascinating. And while sleep paralysis is very common around the world, it seems like Newfoundland has a very specific legend surrounding this experience. And it's really interesting, when you look at cultures around the world, many of them have their own specific legends surrounding sleep paralysis. For example, in Turkey, sleep paralysis is called karabasan and is similar to other stories of demonic visitation during sleep. In Japanese culture, sleep paralysis is referred to as kanashabari, literally bound or fastened in metal. In Chinese culture, sleep paralysis is widely known as guaiyashen, I hope I'm saying that correctly, which literally translates into ghost pressing on body or ghost pressing on bed. In Fiji, the experience is interpreted as kana tavoro, being eaten by a demon. In many cases, the demon can be the spirit of a recently dead relative who has come back for some unfinished business. And honestly, I could go on and on with these examples. Basically, there's no culture on Earth that does not have some version of the Old Hag syndrome. And not all of these legends involve a malevolent entity, but most of them do, and it's a very common theme. And so I just wanted to touch on this topic briefly in this video. I didn't want it to be super long, and I just find it fascinating that Newfoundland has a specific mythology around sleep paralysis. I just find this whole subject to be fascinating, and I might do more videos on this topic down the road. And that pretty much wraps up my video. I didn't want this one to be super long. I just wanted to briefly introduce this topic. I hope you found that interesting and informative, and if you'd like to watch more of my content in general, please consider subscribing to my channel. I upload at least one new video per week. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Strange North channel.